A 17-year-old warehouse worker bought a property using money he didn't actually have in savings.
5 o'clock in the morning, lifting boxes, throwing it on to get $12 an hour.
Before 30, he was controlling hundreds of units and pulling in tens of thousands a month in rent. Then 2020 hit. Rent slowed, construction stopped, a hotel in his portfolio went quiet, and the entire structure started cracking. This is Built Different. Today we're breaking down the documented rise of Isaac Olowolafe, how a $3,000 entry point turned into a multi-million-dollar real estate operation, how leverage scaled it fast, and how one global shock nearly forced him to dismantle parts of it just to survive. We're counting down the 10 most unforgiving facts behind the build. No hype, no mythology, just structure, exposure, and consequence. Let's start with number 10. Number 10. His first purchase was the approximately $125,000 apartment, and that decision immediately separated him from most first-time buyers. This was not a personal residence or long-term speculation play. After closing, the unit was rented for approximately $1,250 per month, and the income began almost immediately. This was surgical. For someone just entering ownership, seeing rent hit the account that quickly reinforces confidence fast. That monthly rent covered the property's ongoing costs and generated surplus cash flow. It was the first time he experienced an asset producing recurring income without additional labor. Instead of trading hours for pay, the property operated independently. That shift from effort-based income to asset-based income is what validated the model and made scaling the next logical move. Number 9. Within roughly 5 years of his first purchase, Isaac had grown his portfolio to around 20 properties. The expansion came from repeatedly acquiring small residential units rather than a single large asset. By that point, ownership spanned multiple properties with recurring rental income, moving him from a single landlord to a portfolio operator. The scale itself was not appreciation, but it is what marked the shift from a first deal to a functioning rental portfolio. Number 8. After scaling his rental portfolio, Isaac launched his own property management company. Instead of outsourcing day-to-day operations, tenant handling, and maintenance, he brought management in-house. This gave him direct control over rent collection, expenses, and property upkeep across his portfolio. This was a bold power move. Many entrepreneurs fail to make this decision quickly. Management was no longer a third-party cost, however. It became part of the operating structure of his real estate business. The move aligned ownership and operations under one roof, tightening control as the portfolio grew. Number 7. As his investing activity expanded, Isaac started his own real estate brokerage firm. This placed him on both sides of transactions now, as an owner and as a licensed intermediary. The brokerage allowed him to participate directly in buying and selling activity, earning commissions alongside investment returns. Deals were no longer limited to ownership income alone. Now he was slowly becoming a kingpin. By operating a brokerage in parallel with investing, transaction access and deal flow stayed internal rather than outsourced. Number 6. Alongside pre-construction purchases, Isaac used 2 approaches. Some units were sold after completion, generating 5-figure profits per unit. Others were kept and added to his rental portfolio. This meant returns came in 2 forms: one-time gains from sales and recurring income from held properties. Different projects produced different outcomes depending on timing and market conditions. Learn from the best. We analyze entrepreneur moves so you don't have to. Subscribe to know how these guys make brutal moves. Number 5. At one stage, Isaac had committed to buying around 250 pre-construction units, locking in properties years before they were completed. These were not finished apartments producing rent. They were future assets tied to construction timelines and market delivery. Genius or foolish? You decide. That meant capital was committed long before returns were guaranteed. If projects were delayed or the market shifted, those commitments could become pressure points. Exits were limited. Liquidity was restricted. Over time, this strategy helped accelerate his growth. Some units were sold after completion for 5-figure profits, while others were added to his rental portfolio, contributing to recurring monthly income. The approach worked during expansion, but when markets tightened and construction paused in 2020, those long-term commitments became pressure points. The same scale that boosted growth also amplified vulnerability during the downturn. Number 4. Business profiles of Isaac report that after scaling to roughly 20 properties, his rental portfolio was generating about $36,000 per month in cash flow. This was not a single breakout deal. It was the result of stacking properties that each contributed predictable monthly income. At that level, the income was no longer tied to one building or one tenant. It reflected recurring rent flowing in from multiple units at the same time. That diversification across properties reduced reliance on any single asset and turned the portfolio into a functioning income system. Reaching that figure marked a structural shift. The operation moved from small-scale ownership to a multi-property cash flow engine, where performance depended on portfolio management rather than individual wins. Number 3. After building his rental portfolio, Isaac stepped into a far more exposed arena: ground-up development. One completed project under his company was Dream Residences at Yorkdale in Toronto, a mixed-use development that included condominiums, townhomes, and retail space. Moving from buying units to building entire projects requires a different level of nerve. The capital is larger, the timelines are longer, and the margin for error shrinks. Public business profiles also indicate that his company had more than 10 additional developments underway across the Greater Toronto area. These projects involved land acquisition, planning approvals, construction timelines, and multi-year delivery schedules. This marked a clear change in scale. Instead of purchasing individual units, he was now responsible for entire buildings, from site control to completion. Taking on that level of responsibility requires discipline and composure because once the project begins, there is no easy exit. Number 2. When COVID hit in 2020, the structure he had spent years building came under real pressure. Rent collection slowed, construction paused, and a hotel asset in his portfolio saw occupancy fall as travel stopped. Revenue tightened while mortgages and development costs continued. He was close to losing control of large parts of the portfolio. To prevent that, he began selling assets to generate liquidity and stabilize the situation. That is a brutal business move. Selling pieces of what you built just to keep the rest alive is not growth. It is sacrifice. This was not expansion, it was survival. And surviving that period required composure under pressure, accepting short-term loss to avoid long-term collapse. The portfolio did not disappear, but it came close enough to force a reset in how risk was managed going forward. Number 1, for his first deal, Isaac purchased the approximately $125,000 apartment that required roughly $3,000 for the down payment. Instead of waiting to accumulate savings, he structured the transaction so he acted as his own buyer's agent. That move shows early decisiveness. Rather than accepting the capital barrier, he stepped inside the mechanics of the deal and used his position to create access. That structure allowed him to earn the agent commission from the purchase, which effectively covered the amount needed to close. The entry into ownership came through transaction mechanics, not accumulated capital. It was a sharp, calculated way to bypass the usual waiting game and move earlier than most people would. This was the first time he used position inside the deal itself to create access to property ownership. Bonus fact: before any portfolio, before development, before pre-construction scale, Isaac was working overnight warehouse shifts at UPS at 17 years old. It was hourly labor, fixed pay, no leverage, no upside beyond the next shift. That environment exposed the ceiling early. Income was tied directly to time, and time was capped. Instead of accepting that structure, he pursued real estate licensing and entered transactions while still young. The contrast matters. The same person who later controlled hundreds of units started in a system where income stopped the moment the shift ended. That early exposure shaped the decision to move toward ownership instead of wages. Before we close this out, subscribe to Built Different if you want breakdowns that go beyond the highlight reel and into the pressure behind the wins. And there you have it, 10 defining facts plus a bonus that show how Isaac built scale, leveraged aggressively, and came dangerously close to losing it all. From structuring his first deal with a commission instead of savings, to committing to hundreds of units, to selling pieces of his own portfolio just to survive a shutdown, this was not a comfortable climb. It was pressure. It was exposure. It was survival. This is Built Different, where we don't romanticize success, we dissect it. The leverage, the risk, the moments where everything could have collapsed. No inspiration quotes, no soft edges, just execution under fire. If you respect operators who take real risk and absorb real consequences, stay subscribed. More founders, more empires, more stories where the downside was real. Until next time, understand the structure, respect the downside, and build like you mean it.